obviously a critical moment, as the Deputy Speaker has explained. It's been an extremely challenging week with so much that has been changing and so much that is uncertain for the days ahead. I want to let everyone know that in the New York Attorney General's office, we have been preparing for this moment for months. During the last Trump administration, the New York Attorney General's office filed nearly 100 legal actions against the Trump administration and was successful quite a few of those, around 80% of the time, in challenging what Trump was doing. Our preparation for this time around allowed us to file a lawsuit against Trump's executive order attempting to undermine birthright citizenship in this country. And I'm very pleased to report that a companion case filed by several states' attorneys general in the state of Washington resulted in a restraining order stopping the implementation of that unconstitutional order by the Trump administration. So that is just the first of what will be many examples of the state attorneys general of this nation confronting what the administration is attempting to do and defending immigrant communities all across the country. We are reviewing carefully each and every legal action that the Trump administration is taking and assessing all of our options. We recognize that we are in a different environment than we were before. Things are going to be more challenging as this administration has come in more prepared and more aggressive, and we have less support in our courts, given the installation of many Trump judges. But we're not going to back down when we see attacks on the rights of New Yorkers, including our immigrant communities. We will be confronting those where possible in the courts and doing all that we can to protect New Yorkers. The New York Attorney General's office has guidance on quite a few pivotal issues, including what law enforcement can and cannot do with respect to immigration enforcement in New York State. We have guidance around our schools, and we've done our best to get those resources out to the folks who need them, and there will be more on the way. We also want to be a resource to the community when we need to be informed about what is happening. As the Deputy Speaker explained, this is a critical moment for us to come together as a community to share information, to keep each other informed, and we need to be informed of what's happening in your community so we can assess what the legal options may be and to serve as a resource as we move through this time. It is so important to have moments like this to come together as a community to support one another. I really commend everyone who's here today for playing an important role in doing that. Sharing information about our rights, sharing information about the latest actions of the administration, and keeping ourselves informed is going to be one of our best defenses. And the Deputy Speaker has brought together just an esteemed panel today of experts in your communities who are going to be able to share critical information that everyone needs to know about their rights, about what we can do and what we can't do to confront ICE enforcement actions, how to come together and protect one another as a community. So I'm grateful for the invitation to be here. I'm really looking forward to hearing in detail the concerns of this community and to hear the guidance from the panelists. So thank you once again, and we look forward to continuing to work with you all from the Attorney General's office.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Again, what a critical moment it is right now. And, the administration's goal is to scare us into submission, scare us into paralyzation. And Tish James, the Attorney General, is someone that's not doing that and is fighting every single day to make sure our community is represented, but also that our justice is being heard. So thank you so much, Zoe. And I know there's other people from your office on the call today, so we really appreciate it. And this information is so critical to our community, so thank you. We did have some technical issues in the beginning of our call today. I do want to apologize. The Zoom, as everything, as we know since COVID, there's always something that happens when it comes with technical issues. So I do want to apologize to everyone online who's watching us on Facebook. But we're looking like we're in a good shape. Please let us know if there is any issues. If the Deputy Speaker is able, I'll ask them to make us some brief remarks before our next speaker, who is another trailblazer in the movement, someone who is the first Latina as president and CEO of New York State University, Dr. Betty Rosa. So thank you, Dr. Betty Rosa, who's going to talk to us about education and the space of education to make sure that our students at every level are being supported and who are being protected. You know, the most fundamental thing right now, the silver bullet is education, and protecting our students is so critical. So I would like to bring up to our panel right now, Dr. Betty Rosa.
Gracias. Buenos días todos. So, Zoe, gracias por, Zoe, thank you for, thank you for your, I caught the tail end of your, obviously your statement, and I'm so grateful to the AG because she has not only been a trailblazer, but she has been with us in so many of these issues that we've confronted for a while. This has been a journey for many of our communities. So I'm just gonna ask before I introduce my staff that's with me, if that's okay. I'd like to just say a couple of words in Spanish. So,
yeah, please.
Gracias por esta oportunidad y quiero que sepan que nosotros estamos con ustedes y esto es un tiempo bien difícil para nuestras comunidades, pero también especialmente para nuestros padres y nuestros hijos. Y a la vez que estamos tratando de educar nuestros hijos, y educarlos en un sitio que se sientan cómodos, que sepan que es un sitio donde ellos vienen para aprender, para también celebrar todo las destrezas y todo lo que ellos saben. Y ustedes como familia han sido tan importantes dentro de esta situación. Y le agradezco que han venido a oír y simplemente estar seguro que nosotros estamos con ustedes, que le brindamos toda la información que estamos tratando de darle, pero a la misma vez una protección que sabemos que es tan importante en un tiempo tan difícil. Y quiero que sepan que en total estamos con ustedes, pero a la misma vez también queremos dar ciertas destrezas, cierta información para que no solamente ustedes sepan esta información, pero se ayuden unos a los otros y que hagan, como nosotros decimos, un plan para que estén seguros que a la vez que pase esto, que estén bien informados. Y yo sé que todos podemos hacer lo que hacemos porque estamos con una voz y estamos tratando de ayudarnos unos a los otros. Quiero que sepan que yo estoy presente con ustedes, no solamente en términos de educar sus hijos, pero a la misma vez presente en términos como mujer latina que sabe, que entiende las experiencias que nosotros sufrimos dentro de nuestras comunidades, a la misma vez tratando de progresar y levantar, como decimos, el pueblo. Gracias por esta oportunidad y quiero introducir naturalmente la gente que están conmigo del departamento. So I'd like to obviously introduce my general counsel, Dan Bentley, and I know he's somewhere. I did see him.
Yep.
And
Good morning, Chris. Thanks.
Thank you for being with us. And I just want to say that he was instrumental and has been through all of this issue. So as you know, working with the AG and making sure that we craft the guidance on safeguarding the rights of immigrant students. And so thank you, Dan, for being also beyond a trailblazer, being so committed to safeguarding and protecting our children and our communities. Along with that is my partner, my senior deputy, and that is Dr. Jeff Madison. I think I saw him as well. Dr. Madison, I think.
I am here, Commissioner.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for being, and again, someone who truly not only feels the pain with me as we're going through this very painful journey, but also a thought partner and someone that stands with all of us shoulder to shoulder. So thank you for that. So today I just want to deliver the message that not only have we been in touch with our stakeholders, are definitely many of our superintendents have reached out. We had a meeting with our, with the council group, our committee, and we have been making sure that not only we issue the guidance to not only schools, to district schools, we also shared it with advocate groups and other stakeholders. In addition to that, we reissued it Thursday. We reissued this week a just a reminder, please, if there's any kind of issue, get in touch with us. And anything we can do, and we are kind of sharing as things are happening. We're sharing it with the governor's office. We're sharing it with the AG's office. We're sharing it with different organizations so that we can get the kind of collective support that you need. You need to feel that, we have a group of individuals that are here for you. And this is really, as I said, painful, challenging times, but we will get through this together. We cannot just do this alone. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Deputy Assemblyman Ramos, in case he wants to ask some specific questions. We are prepared to answer those questions.
Thank you so much. Again, another trailblazer, and it's, moments like this, we realize the significance and importance of having Latino representation in every level of government, because when the floor gets taken underneath us, it's a moment that we can trust that people like you, Doctor, are there to support us. So thank you so much for joining us today. I do want to introduce other panelists, and then we'll get into some questions if that's okay.
Thank you.
And for language justice, we do have captions on our videos here that are translating in Spanish. So we always want to make sure that we're able to be communicating in every language possible. So at this time, when it comes to boots on the ground, there's no other boots on the ground organizations like Make the Road. And we want to thank Make the Road for being with us today. So at this time, I'd like to just bring forward Angel Reyes from Make the Road to introduce themselves and make a few remarks.
Thank you, Christian. Also, thank you, Deputy Ramos, for inviting us and for being an ally and a leader for many years. And thank you to all of you who've been doing the work. We all know it's been a difficult week, to say the least, right? And but it's no surprise. We knew this was happening. I think Trump is just carrying his campaign promises, right? And I can assure you that the advocates, local, state, nationally, we've been getting ready for this moment. We've been prepping. We feel, I'm not gonna say we feel good, because there's also capacity. It's difficult, right? But at least we know that what we're fighting against, right? Well, as Christian said, I'm Angel Reyes. I'm an organizer coordinator with Make the Road New York. With the Long Island team, we have an office in 1090 Suffolk Avenue in Brentwood. We, have an organizing team. We have a group of, we have members that get together in Suffolk, in the Brentwood office, but we also have a committee of active members in Westbury, and that's where we do our NASA work. Our Suffolk organizer is Roman Serrano, and NASA, it's Javier Guzman, people doing amazing work. But in our office, we also have different programs and services. We have a youth program. We have English classes. We have a Department of Health that helps people enrolling and answering questions about, health insurance, and we have like beautiful people in the office. Um, and something, you know, that I want to be brief and just kind of like just, you know, say what I have in my mind, because I have many different emotions, because it's been difficult for our communities, for our people. We hear it from our membership, right? We have people reaching out, um, asking what to do with their children, right? If they get stopped, right? We've been getting phone calls of many different rates happening on Long Island. Some of them that we've been able to confirm, but also many of them that we cannot really confirm, right? And I think that's also a problem, because we cannot instill fear in the community. We cannot be promoting any rumor or any hearsay about ICE is here or La Migra is there, right? I think we need to be cautious, and we need to, you know, double check and triple check, and if we're gonna put something out, we want to make sure that it's being confirmed, right? And and for that reason, you know, I want people to be clear about one thing, right? And and I think in a way, um, Deputy Ramos said it, but this is a racist attack, right? This is just a moment of difficult politics, you know, but it's driven by this sense of, you know, xenophobic, you know, nationalistic rejection of people that do not look like them, right? Also, this does not represent the whole government, and it does not represent the whole big picture of the American people, right? It's a group of people. It's a group of people that have been there for the longest time, right? Because even when I started doing this work many years before Trump even showed up, right? We had people, you know, anti-immigrant people in the county, and we had people, you know, on the streets. But it looks like we're in a moment where like these people have been able to organize, right? They found a mouthpiece with Trump, and they've come to power, right? So that's why I think it's important for the community to know that this does not represent the whole picture. We have good people in government, right? We have good advocates. We have good U.S. citizens, allies, people that are trying to do the best by our community, right? Also, something that I wanted to be clear is that a lot of the things that Trump is doing and the Trump administration are pushing for are not constitutional, right? I'm not an attorney, so I cannot really speak of the constitutionality of things. But what I want to say is that a lot of the things, they know that they're going to be challenged in courts. They're just doing it because they want to send a message, right? And the most important thing to know is that what they want to do is they want to instill fear in our community. They want us to like feel like ICE is gonna come at any point, that ICE is gonna come to our schools or churches. They want to kind of like promote that sense of fear. So we stay oppressed, right? So we stay in, so we don't fight back. So the most important thing is that if we have access to the right information, right? If we're connected to, you know, groups like Make the Road, right? That we have a page that has been really successful. If you Google Make the Road, We Protect Us, we have a good page with resources and all your right information. But having access, you know, to the other groups, Carecen and the other people doing the work, as well as the office of Deputy Ramos, like having access to that information, which is trusted information, I think it's how you kind of like are able to fight against that fear, because you understand that there's protection, that there's laws, that not anyone can just ICE cannot just come and grab you and take you and that's it, right? There's a process, right? Of course, the Trump administration is trying to undo that process, but there's gonna be a fight and there's gonna be many challenges. But for that reason, we need to know our rights, and we really need to be connected to information, right? There's a lot of know your rights out there. I think it's important to know not just about if what if ICE comes to your house, but also what about if they stop you on the street or if they come to your place of work. You know, there's information about it. And I think if you are impacted by but the new administration, you don't have an immigration status. The most important thing you can do right now is just have access to that information. Like I said, we Make the Road has that information, but other groups also have that information. And the last thing, and I think the most important thing, right? The only way and this is my personal opinion, is that we need to win. We need to find a strategy, and we need to achieve. We don't want to let the racist side and the people that want us to be in fear know that they have won. And the way we do that is we organize, right? We learn our rights. We know how to protect ourselves and our families, but we come together, and we're not hiding. We're proud about who we are. We're proud about our heritage. I'm Peruvian. I came when I was 15 years old. I have a wife, two U.S. citizen kids, but I'm still proud about who I am, where I came from. And also I want my kids to be proud, not only of the place, where they were born, which is America, but also I want them to be proud of their heritage. Their mom is from Colombia. I'm from Peru. I want them to eat arepas, and I want them to understand what like Papa la Huancaína is, right? So I think it's a moment where we need to be proud about who we are as people, but we also need to come together and we need to fight, right? And as Christian was saying, we Make the Road have been fighting, and we have campaigns that we're pushing for. One of the most important ones is the New York for All Act, which which is a statewide campaign that I know the office of Deputy Ramos has been supporting. We want to end any communication between local agencies, police department, and other local agencies, and ICE, right? State agencies and ICE. We do not want that information to be transferred to the federal government, and we want to make sure that we pass, right? So how do we get active? We call our assemblymen, our assemblywomen, we call our state senators, and we ask them, we need New York for All, right? We have other campaigns, Access to Representation Act, Dignity Not Detention Act, which also will make difficult for ICE and for the Trump administration to do their work. At a local level, we want to get our school districts to really speak against the Trump administration plan of sending ICE to school, which Deputy Ramos already spoke about it. It's horrendous. It's the worst thing that could happen. It's not only for the kids that are being or they're trying to detain, but all for the other kids to see their friends like being detained and being arrested. I think it's like one of the worst traumas that a children could experience, right? So I think we have to do that work locally. There is a coalition on Long Island of active advocates and groups that have been having conversations, that have been organizing. So we're gonna continue doing that work and putting that information out there. As I said, we also have our committee meeting. Our members get together in Suffolk and Nassau. If you wanna participate, it's a safe space. Let us know, and we do run Know Your Right workshops, and we're gonna be sharing information and helping people navigate this difficult moment. And at the same time, Make the Road New York also continues to do federal work. One of the most important things is, really pushing back against the illegalities and the completely blatant, disregard of the Constitution by the Trump administration. So we are part of the lawsuit for the executive order that ended the birthright citizenship. And we're so far it's looking good. The law is upholding, but we are continuing to do that work. And something that's also really important, I don't know if my friends here will speak about, but the Laken Riley Act, which is something that has been making rounds on the news. I think it's good to understand what it is. That might be the first anti-immigrant bill that Trump will sign. So we have to get ready for that, right? So, you know, get connected to Make the Road, get connected to the groups doing this work. You know, we'll share the information, but you can Google Make the Road and you can get in contact with us. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We continue to share information, and that's my portion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel. Yeah, like it's such a critical moment to make sure we know our rights. And I think everyone is aware that there's a big part of this, that it's a scare tactic, that there's a big part of it that he knows is not founded and that it won't pass legal muster. And to that, we have a lot of different friends in the community who are lawyers, who work in immigration, who are actively representing our community when it comes to ensuring that they have access to legal representation. So I do want to bring up Luis Nicole, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who's here, who will give us, if you can give us just a short introduction, because I know we have a lot of questions right now. We have over 100 people right now viewing this, and I do invite people who are on Facebook. We're dropping the Zoom link on the chat, so please join us on Zoom so you can directly be here as well. But we're watching the chat for questions on the Zoom, and we're also looking at the chat on the Facebook Live. So please join us here or on the Facebook. So Luis, if you can please introduce yourself shortly.
Good afternoon. How's everybody? Good morning. My name is Luis Nicho. I'm from the law offices of Pimentel and Nicho here in our offices are located in Queens and Brentwood, Long Island. I'm keep it really short. One of the things I think the community needs to understand is that this is a chaos and terror tactic that's going on by the current administration. A lot of the executive orders that he's pushing through will most likely, as the Attorney General's office stated, will be blocked by several federal litigations that will have to be filed. But what happens is it's creating chaos among our community. And I think that these type of meetings where we can see that not only attorneys, the Attorney General's office, the Deputy Speaker, and I think our brothers and sisters out there, immigrant community, need to understand that we are here to support, we are here to guide, and we are here to make sure that their rights are not trumped. One of the biggest things that we need to just be careful with is the misinformation that goes on. Constantly, our offices are on the phone, on the different channels with the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and it really comes to fruition that we're going to have to fight a lot of these things at the federal level with federal litigation. But you know, we have to be smart. We have to be careful. While we're seeing a lot of these raids, we have to be careful, like the Deputy Speaker said, to not converge and gather, because unfortunately, the collateral damage of what's going on is a lot of people are not bringing their kids to school. A lot of people are not going into work. And I think that one of the last things that we need to do is just walk around scared. I know it's a scary time. I'm an immigrant myself, coming here when I was 7 years old from Peru. I've been through the system. I know what it is to be on the other side of not knowing what may happen, but there's a strong community here. So a lot of the executive orders that have been passed and firing at rapid rate right now, there is current litigation stopping, specifically with the 14th Amendment. And there are others that were, like I said, is going to have to be taken into federal litigation to stop. One of the things I urge the community is to obtain proper legal advice. For example, my office, we do not charge for consultation. We're more than glad to speak to anyone on any type of basis, whether it be in person, virtual, or by phone consultation, is to get the proper legal advice. This is not the time to carelessly submit applications to the Department of Homeland Security, carelessly seek an avenue of relief that sounds good. Right now, one of the biggest problems that we have is the online scams that are going on with our Latino community. And we just need to be properly guided, because it's not a time to falter. It's not a time to be scared. It's a time to be tactful. And I think that among the practitioners here in the United States for the American Immigration Lawyers Association, we understand that it is a rapid fire of executive actions that many of them will not go through, but the collateral damage is real. And we want to make sure that the community understands that we're here for them. Right now, we're receiving tons of phone calls from different areas about different things that can be done and not be done. There's obviously a mass misunderstanding of what takes effect, what doesn't take effect, especially with the 14th Amendment. A lot of our communities figuring out what may or may not happen with their children. And again, we can go on and deeper, and I'm sure we will today, but proper legal advice is the key to this, and not to run scared. This is what he wants. This is what he's looking for. And we're more than ready and willing to go ahead and stop and trump any of these actions that he's doing at the local level, whether it be with the Department of Homeland Security, the Executive Office of Immigration Review, or at the federal level, which a lot of these cases will have to be taken there. It's not automatic. There is certain due process rights that are being violated, but there are due process rights that many of our immigrants do have. And again, I urge the community to make sure that they get proper legal advice, because around that time that these things are going on, unfortunately, very much unscrupulous attorneys, unscrupulous preparadores are there looking for, the scam, the fraud, and the people who always suffer is obviously the immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your words today. And I don't know if you're able to give us a short version of that in Spanish, because I know we have a lot of Spanish speakers today. If you can, that'd be great.
Oh, absoluto. So, primeramente, muchas gracias por la invitación. Mi nombre es Luis Nicho, soy abogado de inmigración. Soy inmigrante, nacido en Perú. Vine aquí de los 7 años y me crié en la área de Brentwood. Una de las cosas más importantes de saber es que no hay que perder la cabeza, hay que estar espíritu alerta, pero estar muy atento, porque las tácticas de esta administración es de asustar, de sorprender y de temor, ¿no? Que la comunidad esté en un temor, y cuando uno no está pensando bien y está atemorizado, se pueden cometer muchos errores, específicamente con la gente de falta de ética que está ahí esperando a darte ilusiones las cuales no son verdaderas. Muchas de las órdenes ejecutivas de este presidente son básicamente tácticas para asustar y sorprender a la comunidad inmigrante. Muchas de ellas ya están siendo peleadas, como habló la oficina de la Procuraduría General de Nueva York, la representante, ya han parado muchas de estas órdenes ejecutivas para que no tomen efecto. Y nosotros como abogados también entendemos que al nivel federal es donde se va a tener que tomar muchas de estas acciones, ya que viola muchas de las órdenes y las leyes que ya existen. Pero como le digo, lo que él está haciendo, esta administración, es de tratar de asustar y atemorizar a la comunidad. Ya lo estamos viendo, donde niños no están yendo a la escuela, donde trabajadores no están yendo al trabajo. No le urjo a la comunidad hispana que mire, por ejemplo, hoy día tenemos representantes de la Procuraduría General, representantes de oficinas como Make the Roads, abogados. Estamos aquí para ayudar, estamos aquí para ser su refugio y para pelear por los derechos suyos. Y no quiero que la comunidad pierda esa esencia de lo que estamos haciendo. Vamos a darle la buena batalla y vamos a vencer. El problema es que obviamente a cada rato salen diferente información, y lo que yo le urjo a la comunidad hispana es que busque una orientación legal correcta, ¿no? Mis oficinas siempre están abiertas, no cobramos por consultas, no me importa si me tengo que quedar hasta las 10, 11 de la noche. Lo que me gusta es que la comunidad tenga un entendimiento de lo que de verdad está pasando y no esté con pánico, porque con el pánico es lo que a veces se pierde la brújula de hacer lo correcto.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, thank you for your leadership and for the work that your office is doing for us. I do want to turn it back.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Ya, una pregunta. Lo más importante es que todo el mundo tenga un plan. Y desde el punto de vista de un abogado, ¿nos puede dar algunos puntos que debe ser ese plan de la gente para que estén preparados si algo ocurre? ¿Cuáles son los pasos que deben hacer?
La importancia que tenemos que saber específicamente con las brevadas que están pasando, and I'll go back and say this in English, es de que hay que entender que una orden de un oficial de migración no es igual a una orden firmada por un juez para poder entrar a las casas de las personas. El problema es que decirlo y hacerlo son dos cosas diferentes. Nuestra comunidad está tan asustada que cuando vienen a tocar en la puerta de un oficial de migración, inmediatamente entra el pánico. Pero hay que pensar bien, al menos que haya una orden firmada por un juez, no pueden entrar a la casa. Al menos que se lo enseñen, no pueden entrar a la casa. Entendemos que la comunidad tiene temor, ¿no? Y dentro del pánico, cualquier documentación, abren las puertas. Yo les sugiero que al menos que se vea esa orden firmada por un juez, no hay que abrir las puertas. En términos de preparación, si ya hay algo pendiente, si hay un recibo de una petición, si tienen permiso de trabajo por el TPS, yo le urjo a las personas que tengan esas copias dentro de sus bolsillos, de sus carteras, porque dentro de las brevadas hemos visto que hasta ciudadanos americanos que no tienen documentación, que son hispanos, obviamente, porque somos muchos que somos ciudadanos, han sido también cogidos dentro de las redadas. Específicamente a las familiares, si tienen hijos menores de edad nacidos en los Estados Unidos, siempre se le puede decir al oficial que no hay nadie más que cuide a su niño, ¿no? Ha habido en el pasado muchas denuncias por haber dejado menores de edad cuando migración se ha llevado a los mayores. Entendemos que ahora con las órdenes de este presidente, ellos mismos están en peligro de ser castigados por no hacer su trabajo, pero al fin y al cabo somos humanos. El plan que yo diría a la gente es tener sus documentos siempre en el bolsillo y tener un plan que si Dios no quiere algo pase, con quién se quede su hijo menor, quién lo vaya a recoger. Segundo, lo que yo creo que es muy importante es saber cómo es el proceso. Cuando una persona es detenida por inmigración, si es que no tiene un récord migratorio, la manera más fácil de buscarlo en el sistema es lo que se llama el número del extranjero que todo inmigrante tiene cuando pasa por un proceso migratorio. Ese es muy importante de saber ese número porque es la manera de buscarlo dentro del sistema, específicamente si inmigración te está llevando a un centro de detención. Segundo, es algo que yo siempre digo a mis clientes, no es un derecho estar aquí, es un privilegio. Tenemos mucho cuidado, ¿no? Acaba de pasar un acto que va a poner en mucho peligro a la comunidad, el Lincoln Riley Act, ¿no? Que simplemente con una acusación de robo pequeño, ahora se va a considerar mandatory detainable, que lo pueden detener. Entonces, mi sugerencia es tener a alguien de confianza que también pueda tener acceso a sus documentos, ya sea sus tarjetas de residencia, sus permisos de trabajo, pero también tener evidencia de que por lo menos han estado en los Estados Unidos por más de 2 años. Le digo por más de 2 años porque es cierto de las órdenes ejecutivas que están saliendo, lo que se llama the extension of the expedited removal, van a atacar mucho a las personas que por ahora tienen 2 años o menos dentro de los Estados Unidos. Es muy importante porque eso los puede meter mandatoriamente detenidos y la persona va a tener problemas. Pero si uno puede tener evidencia que ha estado aquí más de 2 años, es algo muy bueno de tener porque son las evidencias que nos puede dar herramientas a los abogados para poder forcejear y mover el caso más rápido y obviamente sacarlo bajo un relief. Otras cosas que le digo es tener un abogado de confianza. No todos los abogados son de confianza, no todos somos altos, no todos somos bajos. Esa es la realidad de la vida. Conseguir un abogado que no le cobre por la consulta sería algo bueno. Consultar con un abogado, acudir a una asesoría legal correcta, no el vecino, no el notario, no un preparador, alguien que de verdad sepa y ha pasado por el sistema y entiende la dificultad de navegar, específicamente ahora que esta administración está haciendo tantos cambios rápidamente. Y otra cosa que siempre le digo al cliente es tener alguien, como dije anteriormente, alguien de confianza que se pueda comunicar con usted. Tenemos muchos dentro de la comunidad que son solteros, son solos, no tienen familia aquí, y si se pierden el sistema, ¿quién va a responder por ellos? O siempre tener alguien de apoyo para que se pueda ayudar si en caso pase la tragedia de ser detenido. And now say it in English. I think one of the biggest and most important things is, as we see these raids, is to make sure that we understand between an order for a pickup and an actual arrest warrant signed by a judge. Many occasions and many practitioners will tell you that these officers do not have a warrant signed by a judge. They have what's called a pickup order. We've understand from speaking to officials, from speaking to HSI, which is Homeland Security investigators, off the record, we've spoken to them. The orders that they've received is to pick up people with criminal nature, criminal immigrants, as they call them, and returnees, people who have old orders of deportation. But that's on the surface because they're really looking at anyone and everyone, right? And they have orders of how many people they want to pick up per year. It's all a show. It's chaos and terror to make sure that we terrorize our communities, have them in hiding. And when we do that, we make mistakes. When we're not centralized and we're not focused, we make mistakes. So I urge the community to look today at who we are here today. We have the deputy speaker, we have attorneys as myself, representatives of the Make the Roads, which is a great nonprofit foundation. There is a community here to help you and guide you and properly get you to where you need to go. In terms of preparation, I ask everyone to keep copies of your work permit, keep copies of, if you're in the middle of some type of petition or you're in court, keep copies of that so that you can show that you're either within the process to legalize your status, because as we've heard, even Americans, US citizens are being picked up and swept up because they don't. Now the problem is that sometimes they don't believe the documents you have, but we'll talk about that another occasion. I urge everyone to walk around with copies of the documentation and to have someone that you can confide in to have copies of those documents in case you lose communications. We have a lot of people who are single with no other family members, hardworking individuals. This country was built on the backs of immigrants and will continue being built on the back of immigrants. But we need to be able to have a plan. I suggest for them to have copies of their documentation somewhere with someone that they can confide in. I also urge people to have proof, especially because of the executive orders in terms of the expedited removal, to have proof that you've been in the country for at least 2 or more years. I know it's difficult. As an undocumented person myself, when I came to this country, I know it's difficult to hold that, but sometimes we have children, we have employment papers, we have school records. I suggest you gather those documents and keep them safely and have a copy for someone that can keep for you those documents in case you need to provide them in a future date. And again, last thing is, do not open the door. It is your right. You do not need to speak to anyone unless you see that order signed by a judge. It is the only way that can come in. I know that the scare tactics makes people open their doors and start speaking. The best thing to do is not speak about anything. Have a lawyer that you can confide in and speak to. My offices are always open. We don't charge for a consultation. I always tell an informed client is a great client because they can fend for themselves and teach others. And that's one of the things that we practice in my firm. And that's another thing I ask, that please don't get guided by Univision, Galavisión, or your neighbor. Speak to an expert immigrant attorney who has been doing this for a while and get an idea of what can be not be done. And for those that have USC children, United States citizen children, have someone that can take care of your children in case something happens. We don't want to see the disasters that happened through the government a few years ago when families were separated. You need to have that plan in place because that's the reality what we're living in. And again, don't say this to put people in fear, but to understand what we're dealing with. And also, again, we're here for you, and we're going to give the good fight. A lot of the attorneys in this field are already knowing that we're going to have to fight this at the federal level because a lot of the executive actions have changed and shift a lot of things. So please, again, find appropriate legal counsel from someone who has experience in defense litigation or organizations that have been doing this for a while.
All right, before the last 2 panelists come up, I just want to reiterate something. Quiero reiterar 2 puntos. Uno es que una orden de arresto no es igual que una orden de registro. Si ICE toca tu puerta y como muchos saben, ellos tienen que tener una orden de la corte, pero una orden de la corte, meter a alguien preso, no quiere decir que ellos pueden entrar a tu casa a buscarlo. Hay que saber la diferencia. Muchas veces gente cree que esa orden para buscar a alguien le autoriza y eso no es así. Insista, si ellos van a entrar, necesitan un search warrant. Si tienen una orden de arresto, tal vez si encuentran a esa persona en la calle, lo pueden meter preso, pero eso no le da derecho a entrar a tu casa a la fuerza. Segundo, los notarios. Esto no es momento ir a notario. Hay mucho engaño en nuestra comunidad donde la gente van a un notario. Notarios en nuestro país son algo diferente. Aquí un notario toma un examen un día y ya es notario. No es como abogado. Entonces, no es momento ir a un notario. Hay que hablar con abogados para saber sus derechos.
Yes, thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Like, again, such important information that is being shared right now, and we're having hundreds of people join right now because we were really afraid, and the facts are going to lead us to light. So I do want to, I see, is Julia Millers here?
Yes, hi.
Okay, great. If you could please introduce yourself from Carison, another great organization that is a part of our community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and for having this panel. This information is desperately needed by the community. My name is Julia Miller. I'm an attorney at Carison. I'm a supervising attorney for our special programs team. And I just want to reiterate some of the points that have been made today. Most importantly, if you have contact with ICE, if you hear of ICE contact or ICE in your communities, please call one of the organizations that you hear today. Carison is tracking these ICE encounters. This information is vital for us both to prepare and protect our community members, to know what's going on so we can follow up and try to confirm credible reports of raids, credible reports of ICE in different locations, whether it's workplaces, schools, or homes. It's desperately important that you remain calm. If you do see ICE or you do have contact with ICE, in addition to the things that were just mentioned about understanding the difference between an arrest warrant and a detainer warrant, understanding that you do not have to open the door, you do not have to speak to them. If you are able to safely, we do encourage people to take photos or videos of ICE officers and to forward that information to organizations like Carecen, so that we can, again, prepare and plan and protect the communities. One thing that Deputy Speaker Ramos had mentioned earlier is how the Trump administration, a lot of the scary stuff that's happened this week is because the Trump administration has been preparing for this day. For 4 years, they've been working on their day one plan. But that's not to say that us immigration practitioners have not also been planning. They may be better prepared, but we are also better prepared than we were when the Trump administration came in 2016. The reason that we were able, things like the litigation about birthright citizenship, the reason that was able to move through and be stopped so quickly is because practitioners have been preparing. So I don't, this is a scary time and there is fear and there is reason to be afraid, but there's also reason to remain calm and to remain encouraged that us as practitioners are doing everything we can. And we've been preparing to do everything we can. The best thing that the community can do is to reach out to organizations like Carecen that offers free legal services, to reach out to attorneys like Luis Nicho who offer free consultations to get that accurate information about your case, your rights, your specific risk, but also to Carecen. We've been in contact with numerous organizations throughout Suffolk and Nassau County. We are preparing presentations with the Brentwood School District. The Brentwood School District has been an amazing ally to Carecen over the past few years. And so reach out to your schools, to your local organizations. Ask them, hey, when are you putting on a Know Your Rights presentation? I want to know specifically what to do if I'm stopped by the police in the street, if police or ICE come to my home or to my work. I want to know what I should be doing to plan and prepare. Carecen is currently creating materials, posting information about things like standby guardianship. So as people have mentioned, we don't want to create fear, but we want people to be prepared for a worst case situation so that there is not a situation where, oh, what am I going to do with my children? Or I own a house and what's going to happen to that, or my assets? You should be planning. That is not, we're not telling you to plan because we want you to be afraid. We're telling you to plan because we want you to be empowered so that you know that in the worst case scenario, you're prepared. We are encouraging people to memorize at least one phone number so that in a worst case scenario, if you are detained, you are able to call somebody and have them help you from the outside to contact and connect with community organizations, attorneys, people who can help you take care of your children, and things like that. As has been mentioned, we encourage you to keep on your person any documents showing your legal status, if you have a case pending, things like that. As we've seen with raids in New Jersey, people are at risk, and there is a lot of racism happening in these investigations, in these detentions. They're detaining people based off of who they perceive might be an immigrant, which is often based off of the color of your skin, or if you have an accent, or all of these terrible things. That is not legal, but it is happening. So people should be prepared. People should keep their documents on them. And again, reach out to community organizations to ask for information. A lot of organizations like Carecen, we are not publicly publishing a lot of the Know Your Rights things that we're doing, especially when we're planning in-person events, because we do not want the risk that information falls into the wrong hands. But you can call us. I'll put our contact information in the chat. You can give us a call. You can speak to, like I said, we're planning presentations with the Brentwood School District. So reach out to trusted community members, reach out to trusted community organizations and ask them when and where you can get information about how to safety plan, how to create a standby guardian for your children, what to do in the instance that you have interactions, but also reach out for consultations to see what information you can get as far as things that you can do to protect yourself. The information that we have received so far about ICE in the community. It seems at this point that they're primarily targeting people who have final orders of removal. So if you know that you have an order of removal, you may be at a higher risk, and it may be more important for you to start these planning things and start getting this information about how to protect yourself. That is not to say that they are only targeting people with final orders of removal or contact with the criminal justice system. So do be prepared, do protect yourself, because there is a chance that if ICE comes looking for one person, they will take collaterals, meaning they'll take other people in the home or in the workplace that they find. But again, we're telling you this to be prepared, not to scare you, because you do have rights in these situations. You do have protections, and there are things that you can do to safeguard yourself and your families. The last thing that I will say is just this group, the fact that we're having this conversation is so important and so vital. And this is us reassuring you that you are not alone, that we as community members, we as practitioners, we in government, we are working together to protect you, to come up with a plan, to prepare, to fight these terrible policies that are coming out, and we will fight. This is not us telling you that you need to be scared and alone and hide. This is in fact us telling you that you need to band together. It is more important now than ever that we stand together, that we share information where possible, that we safeguard ourselves, that we prepare for our worst case scenarios, but we also look out for our neighbors, for our family members, for our community members. And when we can and where it's safe, we take video evidence of things that are happening in the community and send that over to these trusted organizations who can fight on behalf of the community in general.
Great. Thank you so much. And Kerrison has done so much for our community with Make the Road. We're getting so many questions right now, so I do want to jump into the question part of our program.
Christian, can I start off with the first question? Two things here. One is, and I guess this goes to our educational officials and also to some of our attorneys here. Unfortunately, parents are now going to have to face a dilemma of having to have a conversation with their young children to prepare them in the event of a traumatic event and to speak to them. Lamentablemente, padres van a tener que tener una conversación con sus hijos en este momento para prepararle. Es una lástima que niños inocentes van a tener que tener ese temor de lo que posiblemente le pueden pasar, pero si no hablan sobre eso, puede ser que algo pase y no estén preparados. Entonces, mi pregunta para los oficiales de la escuela y los abogados es, ¿cuál es esa conversación? ¿Cómo deben hacer padres esa conversación? ¿Qué datos deben cubrir con sus niños para que le graben la mente cómo proceder en ese momento? My question is to our school officials and to attorneys is that sad conversation that unfortunately we're forced as a country to have with our children, the inhumane prospects of having to put that pressure on little kids about the possibility of somebody coming and taking them away. How should that conversation take place? And what are the key details around that from your point of view?
So, Deputy Speaker, I'm going to start in terms of saying that we have been working with, obviously, in general, with our stakeholders, right? I had a conversation even this morning with our parent association, right? To make sure that we are having not only conversations, to your point, to support our parents in having those conversations, but involving our teachers, our principals, right? Our guidance counselors in schools. This network of inside of the shell of the school to empower and support the parents so that they can give the very, very best information. But also, I'm going to piggyback also on having that plan. What if this happens, so that the school also has that kind of information, right? We want to make sure that the parents also, so that the school is a safe harbor place to help those parents not only engage in the conversations that we're having, but having some of those conversations as well to really empower a group, as the parents come in, because remember, coming in individually is very different than coming in as a group where you feel supported, where you're all hearing the same information. Because what sometimes happens if you hear it from your neighbor, right, and it's incorrect, and you trust your neighbor and you believe, it creates another problem. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the parents, first of all, we know communities are being terrorized. Let's bring our kids to school, but knowing that bringing them to school, that these conversations are taking place, because we can't leave them feeling that they're in school and that lack of connection with the parents. And I will tell you, I was in Putnam 3 weeks ago as we were doing these safeguard regulations. And I had a kid say to me, as we were watching, we had in the GED program, right? We had about 10 kids. All of a sudden it went down right after the elections to about 40 some odd kids. I had one kid who said, I'm not coming anymore. I can't concentrate. The thought of me going home and knowing that my mother is gone. I mean, I broke down. I can't begin to tell you. My staff would tell you, I walked away. I broke down knowing that this kid who said, the promise of an education in this country was my mother's, is mine. And to know that this is where I want to be, and then go to my job, and then, support my family, my mother, with being proud that I'm getting an education is difficult. And so we have to support our children and our parents, but we also have to support our parents in knowing the message and knowing how to make this so that it really encourages, empowers our kids. But we also have to do what I know that our senior deputy and I are doing, talking to our principals, talking to our superintendents, making sure, like I had a conversation even this morning with Lars, who they're doing all kinds of internal work to encourage the parents, but also to create the kinds of conversations. How do we then translate that to supporting the parents speaking? How does the guidance counselors, how do the other individuals create that safe harbor of school as a trusted place, as a place where they know that the children are safe, and that, but also having the children know, what do you do if, all of these complex situations, we are working with around the clock with, as I said, our superintendents, our principals, our teachers, and with the organizations inside, but also working with, the kinds of groups that are supporting parents from the legal perspective, but also from the guidance perspective, from the social, emotional, the trauma, all of those things are part of our landscape right now in our conversations in our department. And so we want to make sure that the audience hears us say, when we're having these intent of terrorizing and creating fear, we need to be present and send our kids to school. The worst thing we could do is, give into that fear and not send these are safe places, and our kids need to be with each other. They need to get the support in our schools that they need, and also to tell our children if they're feeling the anxiety. I mean, I had a kid who was taking the Regents exam, and I can tell you, during that Regents exam, the kid couldn't concentrate. This was just happening this week. And, we're dealing with this on a case by case, but we're also dealing with helping, superintendents like Ray Sanchez and others who are really creating it within their districts and within their schools plans of how to support our parents, our students, and knowing that there's a lot of work to be done in this process. So I just want you to know that we are as we're visiting schools, as we've been doing, we started those visits a while ago, but boy, they became pretty intense right after the election. And so we're seeing the drop in attendance. We're seeing parents, having a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and we're trying to get all of our, stakeholders, all of our, officials to really truly roll up their sleeves and make sure that some of the misinformation that's out there doesn't supersede the humanity and the good work that we need to do at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. I mean, we are so fortunate and proud that we have a Latina as head of education in our state. Thank you for being there for us. It's important that the public understand what can happen in schools and what can't happen in schools. Es importante que la comunidad sepa, aunque tienen derecho ir a las escuelas, de verdad, cómo es, qué pueden hacer. La verdad es que ellos no pueden ir a la escuela y hacer una redada. In other words, they can't go to a school and just do a raid. Si ellos van a la escuela, ellos tienen que ir con una orden judicial para un estudiante y tampoco pueden entrar en la clase. Ellos tienen que trabajar con los abogados de la escuela, pedir que ellos le traigan ese niño a la oficina y eso es la manera que lo hacen. The problem is we have school districts here on Long Island who actually like this policy. Some people. Many are not courageous in their stand, but I've heard already from districts who like, we can't do anything. ICE comes here, they can do what they want. I ask that you please inform all your districts that they are not to allow what should not be allowed and the parameters around that, and that, they should not be facilitating things that are not under your policy. The other thing is that they cannot go there and get collateral people. In other words, they can't go there and say, we're looking for this kid, and then find any other kid and question any other kid. Ellos no tienen derecho a ir a la escuela, aunque tengan una orden judicial para un estudiante, y mientras ahí hablar con otros estudiantes, buscar otros, eso es prohibido. Y es importante que los oficiales de la escuela sepan eso. Nosotros lo sabemos, pero como sabemos, en Long Island hay diferentes ideologías aquí. Y es importante que el Departamento de Educación mantenga eso firme con todos los distritos. The last thing I want to say is Riverhead Schools, Superintendent Cheryl Pedicic and James Scudder, the president board, took a courageous stand on behalf of us and said that they will resist traumatizing our kids, and they are under a lot of heat. I ask you, on behalf of Latinos all over our state and in the country, courageous people like that, please stand behind them. Please protect them. They are standing up for humanity, for our community. And I could see, especially in the area that they live, I could see the wagon trains surrounding them.
Yeah. So I have the other thing I want you to know, we in our guidance on safeguarding, which was done with, as you know, because you have a copy. And by the way, we're translating it, but we're also creating letters for our schools to, in a way that the parents, obviously in English and Spanish and other languages. So just so that they really have a basic understanding in terms of the school space. So we're taking the guidance, and this, I think, Dan, right? The guidance is being translated as well. And yes. We're also working very closely on, student information, because that hasn't been talked about. Also, it isn't just coming, but also giving out student information. We have made this crystal clear to all the schools. Now, I have also taken a position in terms of anyone violating this. As you know, my position on many of these issues, and I am absolutely dead serious about don't even go there, as they say, in terms of these issues on behalf of our children, behalf of our schools. So I'm going to give Dan just 10 seconds to talk about the fact that not only our document, but also that we've been spreading it out. We reissued it, as you heard me say. We are constantly making sure that our schools know the do's and don'ts during this time, including our, many of our SROs. We want to make sure that they're trained as well in knowing this, that they can't just go into a student's record, that they can't just give out information. So all of the PII issues, we have been crystal clear in really spreading the word in terms of this is a time that politically, whatever your beliefs are, check them outside the door. Do not bring them into the school. Do not act inside of our schools in a way that in any shape or form jeopardizes our students.
Thank you. It would be useful to have a mechanism in which people can report violations of that, but
We
we'll go
do.
on to. Huh?
Yeah, we do. So Dan, do you want to just, yeah.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, I think the big takeaways, which you'll hear from other people, but this is so crucial in schools, is don't collect this information in the first place. In that, only collect what you have to collect to establish residency, get the kids in. You do not need to have anything that's going to be probative of someone's immigration status. And yes, we've been very clear in this guidance about do not release any of this information absent a judicial warrant. And there's some discussion of the rights that students and parents have under FERPA, which do apply to immigrant students as well. And the SROs, yes, we just had a call last week with the state police, actually. And we've also talked to the School Boards Association to reiterate our position on that, which is they are there for a limited purpose by contract, and immigration enforcement is never going to be a legitimate piece of that.
That part is
there's an
very important
email-
because if the county police, which is under the county, and the county is cooperating with ICE, we have to make sure that these officers don't feel that they have an obligation or they have the right to hand over list of undocumented students. And it's really sad because those police officers were put in our schools to develop good relationships and develop trust with our students. And now that could potentially be weaponized. So we need to closely monitor that.
And we are. And like Dan said, that was something, Julia, you said something that's critical, and I want to stress it. We have been planning for this, as Dan would tell you, over the Christmas vacation. We started the guidance, but even prior to that, knowing that we could get to this place, knowing what we know from 8 years ago, we really understand the importance of the information issue, the importance of the tactics that will be used, and how do you counter those, and how do you prepare yourself. And something you said was critical. It's important to have that information and a plan in terms of children, like God forbid, if we know what's the plan for, whether it's a neighbor, other family members, but I wanted to mention about the SROs, because that's something that we were very concerned about. So we became proactive in ensuring that that information to them is critical, knowing that they are not there to be an extension of ICE.
And if I may, I just want to add a couple of notes, and I'll repeat this in Spanish as well. But as far as having these conversations with children, I've had a lot of friends, family members, clients tell me that they're terrified of how to express this to children because they don't want to traumatize their children by saying, I might get deported. I think, though, we need to remember that in this moment, especially with the access to the internet and media, children already understand. They're already sensing the fear. They can tell when their parent is afraid, and that makes them afraid. The most important thing that we can tell our children and we can do for our children is make sure they know what to do in a situation if ICE shows up to their school, if ICE shows up to their home. Specifically, I've been telling all of my, young clients, I've been telling my clients to tell their children, tell them they do not have to open the door. They should not speak. If they can pull out their phone and safely record or safely take pictures from a window, they should do that. Otherwise, they should be calling a parent. They should be calling an adult, but they should not be opening the door. They should not be talking to anybody or saying anything without having some, other adult or attorney or having somebody else tell them first that is okay and that is safe to do. And also obviously the information that we share with our children is going to depend on their age and their maturity and what they need to know in order to protect themselves. But I think the most important thing that we can do and tell our children is treat this the way that you treat telling your children what to do in case of a fire. This is, talk about it as if this is what you do in an emergency. Kids know that in an emergency, they should call 911. In this situation, kids should know that in an emergency, they should not open the door. They should not speak to anybody. They should call whoever that trusted individual is that you've decided for your family is going to be that person. kids should have the phone number of somebody memorized, same as adults. And as far as, knowing what to do and kind of expelling that fear, this should very much be a conversation of, this is a worst case scenario. This is just in case of an emergency. And as far as what parents can do to prepare their children, having documents, not necessarily you have to carry those documents with you all of the time, but you should have, I've been telling clients to have a document that lists out your child's night routine, your child's allergies, the medications your child takes, so that if in a worst case scenario, a parent is detained, they have something that they can pass off to whoever is going to be taking care of their children in the interim, so that child is taken care of to the best of their abilities. And then, of course, everything that Rosa was saying, Betty Rosa was saying about the schools and the information that's going to be in the school. So I'm just going to quickly repeat some of that in Spanish. Es bien importante cuando estamos teniendo estas conversaciones con nuestros niños. Obviamente no queremos asustar a nuestros niños con todo lo que está pasando, pero es bien importante que tenemos estas conversaciones. ¿Qué va a pasar si hay una emergencia? Igual como si era un fuego. Necesitamos que nuestros niños entendemos lo que necesitan saber. No abra la puerta, no diga nada. Llama a un adulto si alguien venga a la casa, toma video si se puede de un lugar seguro, pero no debe hablar con nadie ni abrir la puerta. Debe empezar llamando a alguien. Y que debe tener en mente un número de teléfono o alguien que se puede llamar si hay una emergencia. Pero más importante, que necesitamos darle información importante a los niños. Obviamente no queremos asustar a nadie, pero es importante que los niños entiendan lo que deben hacer en una situación urgente, así que ellos también pueden sentir como ellos tienen un plan, porque eso es algo bien importante para sentir tranquila en estas situaciones, es para entender lo que necesitan hacer.
It's a total disgrace that we would, the prospects of having to speak to a child of God, a 6, 7-year-old kid, about the prospect of somebody coming to take them from their home. Anybody who supports this needs to really search their soul. And it's sad that this country has come to this. I don't know how we got to this position, but we have to stand and resist and do what we can, especially for the kids, because it's not just about the prospects of the parents being taken away. They are targeting kids. ICE was in my district yesterday. They went to a house and they weren't after any adults. News 12 reported on it. They were after several children there. My God, what have we come to? But information is power, and that's why we have to stand up and resist, and we have to have a continuation of these type forums so people have this, que lo tengan grabado en su mente, porque la propuesta de que tenemos que hablar con nuestros niños, una niña tal vez de 7 años inocente, de la posibilidad de que alguien puede venir a la casa y sacarlo de ahí, eso es una desgracia. Tenemos que resistir.
Can we also talk about one of the things that came up is that, parents have to work and they usually have an older child who takes care of the siblings. And that's standard practice for a lot of parents, as you know. And I have been having conversations with some of our parent organizations to say, at times like this, you need to look for a different process, because even a young child of 12, 13, 14 taking care of the younger siblings, when somebody knocks at the door, even if we tell you, the parent says no abran la puerta, what it is still, when they hear authority, because they're used to knowing authority from school or from
and
other,
taught to respect it. Yes,
they will respect it. So I think we also have to think about having our parents think about the after school, how how the children are taken care of. But also, I do think that the shift that they have to make in order for them to go to work in terms of who takes care of their children while they're at work. And that could be, that could be weekends, that could be after school, because there was an incident that came up where there was knock on the door, and we got a call from one of the teachers saying that the kid became paralyzed and traumatized and didn't know what to do. And as it turned out, there was like you said, they're just knocking on doors sometimes and looking for somebody else. And our kids don't know when they hear that it's a police, or when they hear it's a whatever, they are going to open those doors out of fear. So even no matter how much you tell them, all I'm saying is I would almost suggest that it's one thing to say don't open the door. It's another thing to really, I rather create safeguards that you work it out, that people take care of, help each other in terms of taking care of children under adult supervision, because these are not times when we can use some of the strategies that we normally use. That's just one that got to me this week.
One quick question I have before we open it up to the audience is, I was a police officer for 20 years, and I know that as a police officer, I could not arrest and speak to a minor without the parent there. Can we hear from a legal perspective, perhaps from some of the attorneys there, what are people's rights? Can they go into a school and just take a child out without the parents? What can and what can't they do?
No, I'm going to turn that one to Dan, because Dan, go ahead.
Sure. No, I saw that comment in the chat, and I think the takeaway from our guidance is no. And I was very proud. There was a news story at a New York City principal just yesterday who said, ICE will take me away before you come in the building. And we salute that. And that's a great response. So yes. And I did see a comment in the chat too about the applicability of 18 to 21. Yes, this would apply to students through 21.
So if a child is, if ICE comes to a school, and do they have to notify the parents before anything happens?
So we unfortunately only have guidance on state law for police officers. Technically we can't say what ICE can or can't do, but in our guidance, we use that framework where yes, unless it's a call that there's a crime in progress or you need to execute a warrant immediately out of school, that has been our longstanding guidance, that you must get in touch with the parents. So that would be our advice here.
Right. And we've been using that. We just say, no, create the barrier, create the safeguard, get in touch with the parent. As a former principal, I'm going to tell you, I use that all the time. I would not let anyone interview any child in my school under my care unless the parent was present. And and if you said, well, it's too bad, like that principal in New York City. And New York City also has issued guidance that really truly align with our guidance. And we've been kind of combing through particularly what we call hot spots, because there are areas throughout our state that are targeted, and you could see those areas are targeted. And by the way, I think one of the things that we also have to try to do as an outcome of this conversation and several other conversations we're having is that we need to also look at where do we have those hot spots and try to really concentrate a lot of, our work has to be statewide, but I do think that we have some areas that are very specific and are going to be targeted because there is a willingness by others to open the door, and I mean that figuratively, but you know what I'm saying. So, so at the end of the day, there are places that are very, very much in support of this, and so they are going to be very supportive, whether it's school boards and, as you know, superintendents, school boards, principals. We have them. I wish I could say that all of my superintendents, all of my principals are with us and focus on this. And I'd like to believe that 99.999 are there. But at the end of the day, we have to also plan for those communities and those situations that we have where they're spreading the misinformation, they're spreading the fear, they're actively participating in supporting the fear. And not only that, but they are also very much a part of the narrative of that this is part of their mandate. You know, so they've taken ownership of that mandate that is being thrown around as, you know, as the president's mandate and other people's mandate. So they've been empowered to be part of that.
We're getting a lot of questions in the chat, and I do want to just mention briefly that a part of the Suffolk County Police Reform address SROs and their inability to work with ICE and their inability to do any sort of immigration enforcement, as well as there's an executive order in Suffolk County that prohibits the Suffolk County Police from working with the ICE officers. So if the county executive decides to change those executive orders, that's a huge red flag for the community, and we should all be aware and advocate on behalf of us to make sure the county executive does not change the current policy, the current executive orders that are in place from police reform that was happened a couple of years ago. So just want to make sure that
I believe that there are federal regulations also that prohibit SRO officers from sharing information. So I hope I don't stand corrected on that. That's the way I understand it. If I'm incorrect, please, perhaps the attorneys could let me know.
exactly. So there's different levels that are red flags that I think Make the Road and Garrison can definitely organize around to make sure that these executive orders that have been in place for decades do not change, because
Right.
anyone wants a special assignment in the White House.
And
Everyone,
we need a mechanism in which to report violations. The public needs to know what to do if this happens. Open up for questions.
So I know we have a lot of questions right now about the schools, but I think that got answered. Another question that's been coming up a lot is that, we're feeling like we're in Arizona, where, citizens feel like they're being targeted now. So what, for the immigration lawyers here, what should citizens be carrying now who are people of color, who might be detained or stopped by ICE? And what are their protections, or what they should be doing to ensure if they have a mixed status family? Of people who are documented, not documented, and things like that. I wonder if any of the attorneys might be able to help us understand that process.
So I'll just say, situations, it's very, very important to carry, documentation. So somebody had mentioned a real ID. A real ID may be useful, but at the end of the day, that still needs to check. If you have a U.S. passport, that you can easily carry around. That is obviously solid proof that you have citizenship. You should carry your LPR card if you're a permanent resident. But additionally, we need to know that these things could happen, right? And the most important thing to know is if you are in that situation, you need to understand what your rights are, have those documentation to show, but also be taking note of what's happening in that situation. Be taking note and be prepared to call somebody. You should still have an attorney's number memorized so that you can call somebody and you can report this. The information sharing between what the community members and organizations like Garrison and Make the Road and these other organizations that are working to do bigger impact litigation and sue when we see violations of people's rights, this kind of information and collecting data about what's happening during these situations is going to be incredibly, incredibly important. As far as protecting against this, I mean, there is no way that you can guarantee that you are not going to be the victim of a racist, racial profiling, or anything like that. The best thing that you can do is remain calm, take note, and call an attorney as soon as you are able to report what you've experienced and to get legal advice as to your options.
Can I ask, with an American citizen, you get stopped by ICE. There is no law in the United States that requires us to have identification. Isn't it the onus on them to prove that I'm undocumented before they could take us in custody? Because I just read a report where a Puerto Rican was arrested, and because he didn't have ID. Not having ID is not a violation of any crime, nor something that I understand as a police officer that anybody can take, and I don't know about federal officials, but in this case, it seemed that the lack of ID made a presumption of guilt, a presumption that this person was undocumented. So does a person who's full citizen, doesn't have ID, do they have a right to say, I don't want to talk to you, and if you have enough to arrest me, but I don't want to talk to you, and I don't have ID, and I don't have to have ID, and goodbye. Would they be within their rights to do that?
They would be within their rights. It's unfortunate that I never thought the day that I have to carry my passport to show that I'm a US citizen would come, but that is a reality of the America that we live in today. You do have that right. The problem is the fear tactic. If I don't show my passport, similar to what happened in Newark, New Jersey, this gentleman got picked up, eventually released, apparently after a few hours of going through the turmoil of what happened. But you do have a right. I think we need to be preventive. We need to be smart. We don't need to engage where we don't need to, especially if you are the breadwinner of your family. You don't want to be put yourself in a situation where, although you're probably going to be released and you may even have an action, a lawsuit against them. But unfortunately, we living in the days that we might have to carry because we're being judged by the color of our skin. So I would ask that we do carry. And myself, this is stuff that between my wife and I would talk about. I'm going to have to start carrying it because when I'm not in my suit, I am another immigrant for them. And that is the truth. So be preventive. Don't be confrontational. Take notes, mental notes, especially who's the officer, who's in charge. As what we saw in Newark, it was obviously a targeted intervention. And most of these are targeted, not random. They're not raids that are just going at random. These are targeted people. And it's the collateral damage that many of our citizens are going to have to suffer. So no, there is no law that you have to show. But the problem is if you don't, and you get one of these officers who are boldened by the executive actions and the whole movement of this new administration, you don't want to get in, like we say in Espanol, pico a pico, right? I don't think that's wise at this moment. So I do, unfortunately, think we should be carrying our passports. We should, if we don't, we should be taking note of what happened, who's in charge, because these are the things that if you speak to your attorney, your representative, or your organization that might take on your action, these are key frames that we need to know where these orders came from and who obviously enforced them. And again, they themselves are in a tricky situation by speaking to personal friends of ours that work for the Department of Homeland Security. They're under the gun as well, as we could say, because they're being sanctioned, they're being forced, and some of them are being threatened of losing their job if they don't enforce these rules, which they know are inhumane and are wrong. But unfortunately, they will have to follow through. But you're absolutely correct. You don't have to carry. There is no law. But unfortunately, when we're dealing with the federal government, and again, the scare tactics of what's going on in our communities, I believe it's probably in your best interest to do carry those documents.
Thank you for that clarification. Do you recommend that people discreetly record those interactions?
Yes, I like Ms. Miller was saying. I believe it's if you can have them recorded. Many a times we also, in my firm, we also do a lot of criminal cases. My partner is a former prosecutor, and we always get into when someone's recording, what the police normally say is you're interrupting in the investigation, right? So it becomes a legal issue. And if you don't have legal training and know how to be savvy about it, you might end up being arrested for something along the lines of interrupting an investigation, interrupting an intervention. But if you can, fortunately, many of us have smartphones that have cameras, recordings, you can record it. I believe that it could be very helpful to have these conversations taped or video.
Yeah, and there's two scenarios. One is people bystanders recording something, which in many cases the police try and turn it on them as interfering with the investigation. And then there's the other scenario where the person himself, the subject. So I would recommend that the subject just hit the record button and put the phone face down on their seat and just record the audio of the interaction. Yo recomiendo que si esto pasa, que graben contacto con el oficial, hágalo discretamente. Pero si hay alguien caminando y uno ve una redada y empieza a grabar, uno puede hacerlo, mantenga su distancia y cuidado con los policías, porque a veces ellos hacen trampas porque no le gustan que uno lo está grabando. Entonces, cuidado que no caigan en esa trampa. Si ellos dicen que tiene que quedarse cruzar la calle, quédate ahí. No desobedezca su orden.
Thank you so much for that information. Another question that we've been getting is that, people who are currently in the process of becoming, a part, like a documented process, should they not continue with that process? Should they not start that process? What do you recommend people to do? Because is this kind of like a red flag to the administration? Like, I'm right here, I'm undocumented. What's your advice for people in that situation?
So in that situation, it's always going to be a case-by-case analysis. There's no blanket rule that we can give because certain people may be at a higher risk than others. It's also going to depend a lot on the strength of the case and the type of relief applied for. So I'm really hesitant to give any kind of blanket statement about, no, you shouldn't continue with the process, because at the end of the day, getting protection is getting some sort of legal status is the best way you can protect yourself. But you should be aware. I will say our office has seen a huge increase in scam, and we talked a little bit earlier about notario fraud. The biggest scams that I've seen especially in Suffolk County, have been internet scams where people are saying, oh, there's this new type of relief that you qualify for. My big advice to people is you should always be able to meet your attorney in person. You should always be able to get a copy of a contract that you signed for any sort of services. And very, very, very important, the Department of Homeland Security is never going to do a video call biometrics or a video call naturalization or a citizenship test. There's been tons of scams with like fake letters from the Department of Homeland Security, fake letters from USCIS, fake emails, all kinds of things. So my advice is always, 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 there's a lot of guidance that you can find from, Carecen's website or online generally about how to avoid immigration fraud. Use that information before, to verify that the person you're speaking with is somebody who is qualified and able to speak with you about your case, and then reach out to trusted organizations or to trusted firms. Mr. Nicho's firm, get free consultations, get free information, and talk about your case specifically before you do any action.
Just really quick on that, and yeah, it's absolutely right. It's on a case-by-case analysis. We know from what we're hearing that they're targeting people with criminal backgrounds, with people with old deport orders or reinstatement of the deport orders. It has always been my feeling, and this is my personal advice, that people who have certain criminal convictions and people who have old deport orders, they surely need to speak to an immigration attorney. We know what this administration is doing. They cut the heads off a lot of the Department of Justice employees, EOIR, USCIS. They're obviously putting in their yes men, and obviously information can be shared and most likely will be shared, to be quite honest with you. So I don't expose my clients, specifically after we go into the details of what the nature of the deport order is, or what if they want to be petitioned, but they have certain criminal convictions. I'm always skeptical to not put forward those type of applications after doing a further analysis. But I would definitely, if you fit into that criteria where you have certain criminal convictions or you had a prior order removal, please speak to an attorney. As Ms. Miller said, that is the biggest scam right now we're seeing online. We're in a desperate state, so that one person that tells you, hey, I got the perfect pardon for you, people go to that because they want to hear what they want to hear. No one's ever going to ask you to submit their personal documentations or biometrics. I just had a case yesterday where the lady's telling me, they're telling me pay $1,500 for this waiver, and they're telling me to send my biometrics. No, that never happens. And that you're just opening up yourself for bigger problems such as identity fraud and other issues that may come about. I've had clients that when we go to try to get their lawful permanent residency, their information had been sold 10, 15 years ago, and then those files have to be reconsolidated, and then it just takes longer for them to be able to get the relief available to them.
Yeah, definitely great points there. And I think it definitely case by case basis, but we should all be aware that we're not playing with an equal partner that wants the best for our community. So that's something to keep in mind. A question that's also come in the chat, and we have, a bunch of people on Facebook Live, is, people that aren't at risk right now. And I want to emphasize right now, because I think everyone's going to be at risk with this administration. What can they do? How can they get involved with Make the Road or other organizations to support or help or organize to protect people that are currently at risk?
One of the things that I mentioned before is that, the most important thing is trying to get the state to pass the pieces of legislation that, we think make a lot of sense in a moment like this. The New York for All Act, it prohibits state agencies to communicate with us. For Trump to carry out his mass deportation plan, he definitely needs collaboration. He says he's gonna go after people with criminal records, but that's like a really small group of people, right? And also when we talk about what type of crimes and what type of criminal record, right? So for him to, you know, if he wants to scale up and show numbers in deportations, he needs to collaborate with different departments, you know, like police and like county agencies and like he, you know, I know they want to have access to the DMV and the information that, you know, it's protected by the Green Light Bill. So I think the most important thing is we definitely need to make sure that the New York for All Act is the priority. It happens as soon as possible. That's why we're asking, you know, the Albany and the Assembly and Senate and Governor Hochul to really pay attention to this and make sure they sign it into law. We're gonna be doing a lot of work. So as I mentioned, they, you know, if they want to reach out to us, I have a phone number that where they can call the 631-231-2220. If they want to come to our actions in Albany, if they want to come join our legislative meetings, you know, we're going to be doing a lot of that work. We're going to be having actions. And also if they cannot, you know, join, you know, as I mentioned, calling their representatives, state representatives, saying we need New York for All. We need you to vote for protections and to stop communication between ICE and local agencies. I think that's the most important thing right now. You can also call the office of Governor Hochul and also ask for the same. I think that's the most important thing. We're gonna keep pushing for that information. We're gonna keep putting that information on our social media. So, you know, if you wanna follow us on Facebook and Instagram, we're gonna be, that's gonna be our priority for the year, right? And then also, as I mentioned, we have other bills that we think are important, like access to the Representation Act, which opens up funds from the state for people to have access to legal representation on immigration court. As we know, also the Trump administration has one of the executive orders, I believe it's going after funds. And they say that if you get federal funds, you're prohibited from representing people in immigration court. So I think more than ever, it's super important that that we pass something like the Access to Representation Act and open up funds for groups like, you know, Carecen, Metro, and other nonprofits to continue to do this. I assume that the attorneys are like super swamped right now, and also the organizations are with no capacity. So it's really important that this happens, right? And then we also have the Dignity Not Detention Act that also, you know, prohibits ICE from using the jail system and detentions for the enforcement of immigration, right? So I think we have a lot of good bills that, you know, the legislative session just started, and they need to be a priority for all of our legislators and for the governors. So we definitely encourage people to join this. There's people doing the work, but we need more, right? And a lot of people are saying, what can we do in a moment like this? I think pushing for this, pushing our elected officials to pass something like this, I think is the most important thing right now as well.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. We're winding down now, so I'll ask people to keep their answers a little more precise so that we can get more information. So it's important you call your senator and your assembly person. I'm already a sponsor of the New York for All, but you want to ask them a commitment to get on as a sponsor on that bill. When they get on as a sponsor, it kind of ties them to having to vote for it, vote yes for it. So you want a clear answer, yes or no. Will you support the New York for All Act? If you need phone numbers, whoever your representative is, call my office. Also, if you want to get out a pen, saquen un lapicero en este momento. Al final, todo el mundo aquí va a dar su número de teléfono, las organizaciones y los abogados. Si acaso ustedes tienen más preguntas, más adelante lo pueden hacer. Entonces, pero prepárate con un lapicero.
And I think it's so crucial that people know that not every level of government is against the community. The Office of Deputy Speaker Phil Ramos is extremely committed to providing people information and resources. So find those organizations and entities in government that have the support of the community. So another question that's come up on the chat is there's like this weight that's on top of everyone now. Like the mental health of people are starting to get eroded, which I think is kind of Trump's goal. You know, wear us down to the point where we're just sitting at home. What advice as leaders in the movement do you all have, or the Deputy Speaker has, when it comes to just keep moving forward, keep sending your kids to school? Don't be too afraid, but also be aware, like you should not be coming together in a library with a bunch of undocumented people and putting our community at risk and being strategic about what to do. So I'd like to ask the speaker and other people their advice when it comes to that mental health and just like how we should be moving in the next 4 years, essentially.
Well, I would just briefly say we need to hold our heads up high. We need to resist. We are not. Struggle is no stranger to us. We have overcome obstacles. We've come to new countries. We've learned new languages. No es la primera vez que tenemos obstáculos y tenemos lucha. En muchos casos, la lucha en nuestros países ha sido mucho más difícil, peligroso, violento a veces. Esto no es algo que no podemos vencer. Nosotros podemos vencer esta situación. Ustedes tienen respaldo. No todos los políticos están respaldando. Algunos están tratando de jugar política con esto. Decide ustedes quién son quién y tengan mucho cuidado. Pero tenemos que unirnos, no estar peleando y no permitir que nos dividan. Y también que no defiende lo indefensible, porque hay mucha información que la gente está distribuyendo que el motivo es dividirnos y confundir todo el mundo. Entonces, mi Facebook page, ustedes deben unirse ahí porque ahí vamos a publicar información muy útil. Pueden comunicar conmigo o le podemos conseguir la ayuda que necesitan.
Sí, lo digo en español, Brad. Una de las necesidades más grandes de nuestra comunidad hispana inmigrante es el aspecto mental. Tenemos gente que viene con muchas persecuciones, traumas de su país y ahora con esta situación actual, como que saltan más estos problemas. Hay varias organizaciones, hay CEPA Mujer, está el Long Island Immigrant Clinic, que ayudan no solamente en preparación de documentos, pero en obtener la ayuda psicológica, mental, que es muy necesaria y a veces es tabú en nuestras comunidades. No, como le dije anteriormente, este no es el tiempo de perder la cabeza, hay que tener cabeza fría y hay varias organizaciones que están ayudando a ese aspecto que a veces queda de lado, pero que afecta mucho, no solamente madre, padre, pero obviamente niños y niñas.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention as well, we have vast social work teams. We've started support groups. Many of those support groups are moving to virtual. This is a time to reach out to your community. This is not a time to isolate. I'll repeat this in Spanish as well, but I've put the contact information for both Cadesen offices in Brentwood and in Hempstead. Please reach out if you're feeling that need. We can connect you with a social worker who can help you connect to services that you may need, or help you connect to a support group that may benefit you and give you that sense of community that you need. So, solo para repetir en español, aquí en Cadesen tenemos grupos de soporte, también tenemos trabajadores sociales que le pueden ayudar con encontrando servicios que son gratis o bajo costo, que le pueden ayudar con encontrando alimentos que necesita, pero eso no es un tiempo para estar solo, eso es un tiempo para encontrar comunidad y soporte de su comunidad. Así, si usted está sufriendo mentalmente por todo lo que está pasando, por favor, encuentra ayuda.
It's very important that we stand up and that we don't allow, because many times in these situations, they use our own to divide us. So there will be a few that do that, and we have to stand tall against that. Also, we should not buy into the mentality of what we hear. People want to give the impression that somehow we're asking for some kind of privilege. You will hear people say on the other side, well, this is not against immigrants. This is not against race. All we want is people to go by the same rules as everybody else. But the true history is that the same rules have never been the same in this country for people of color. There were many people who came here chained to the bottom of ships for years. People didn't have citizens. If you're born here, you're a citizen. But the Asian Exclusion Act said that if you were Asian, you could not be an American. So and not only that, 30% of the United States was speaking Spanish when the first English-speaking settlers came here. So let's not buy into all that rhetoric that they want to throw into it. and act like we're asking for some kind of special privilege. What we're asking for is humanity and an opportunity to prosper in a country that's made of immigrants. And immigrants today, it's funny because what immigrants are doing today are the same thing that our founding fathers did. Not one of them asked for a visa, asked for permission, and did anything. And at least the immigrants of today are looking for a legal way to do it within a process which wasn't done at the founding of our country. But they built a great country which is full of opportunities and based on the fact that immigrants come here and the best of every country comes here and gives their best to make this country what it is today.
That is the false narrative that a lot of people buy into, that, well, you got to do it the legal way because people before us didn't do that. It's absolutely false, as we just saw the executive order where the people that came in under the CPP-1 program and the humanitarian parole programs, which got defunct and most likely will be facing now expedited removal orders. So even the people that came in legally, this administration is going after. It is just an excuse. And like you said, Deputy Speaker, it's absolutely correct. We have built this country, all of us, whether we Asian, European, Latin American immigrants have built this country and will continue to be the backbone. And I think that that disconnect in the United States about what we bring to the table. We don't come here to take anything from anyone. We come here to be productive members of society. And every bunch, there's bad apples that happens across the board, but that's a very minute number in terms of the hardworking immigrants that come here and are looking for the opportunity to legalize their status. And unfortunately, this administration is not going to do that because it's very much a racist movement. I hate to say it that way, but that's what it comes down to. There is no other way around it. When we had other countries from other refugees from other places of the world, no one batted an eye. But we had now 1.5 million people come in lawfully, and this administration has turned around and slapped them in the face. And now these people will most likely be facing deportation. So don't buy into that rhetoric that we're only doing this because of that. That's just something that is sold in the media, and we must be alert. And I think that this panel is here today, and I do think that we provided some very good information for everyone here.
Yeah, and if it's only about people who broke some rules, then why do they want to take away citizenship from people? Why is that? That shows you because it's not about the rules. It's about the browning of America, and that's the bottom line of what is driving this. So I want to thank you. Any last comments from anybody, Christian, as we close?
Yeah, no, I think at this point, we're going to continue the conversation and we're going to continue these kind of spaces just because it's so critical to fight fear with facts, fight injustice with justice, and
With the truth.
and everyone on this call from Deputy Speaker Ramos and everyone here is doing that. So we appreciate you. We ask you to continue the conversation with us and let history judge who didn't do anything during this critical moment. So I'll ask the Deputy Speaker to give us our final words for the program and thank everyone for joining us today.
I think everything has been said. Certainly, if there are any follow-up questions in the chat portion, please, any of the advocates who have organizations or the attorneys, put your phone numbers there so people can call. Si hay alguna pregunta, van a apuntar ahora en el chat el número de teléfono de los abogados y las organizaciones. Mi oficina, mi número es 631-435-3214. Cualquier cosa nos puede llamar. Seguimos la lucha. Yo sé, yo creo y tengo fe que Dios nos va a proteger y nuestras familias y seguimos adelante. Manténgate conectado a mi página de Facebook para tener información legítima y si hay preguntas lo pueden hacer ahí o llamar a mi oficina. Muchas gracias. Para adelante que vamos.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
So, Commissioner Rosa, you are truly a godsend. I can't imagine what would happen if we didn't have you there. A proud Latina who doesn't forget her roots, who believes in humanity, and who's in a powerful position to be able to make a change in a very difficult situation for our people. Thank you on behalf of my community, on behalf of every Latino in this state, as Deputy Speaker. I want to thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, everyone.
Gracias. Okay.